Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Channel for Healing. I'm Ashley Akers-Smith, and you're listening to the Channel for Healing podcast. This podcast challenges you to take a look inside, to reveal, heal, and fall in love with all of the pieces of who you are. As you know, each week I continue to invite you to walk with me as I share how my passion for personal growth and healing has led me to have a much deeper connection with not only the physical world, but the spirit world as well. Today's episode is extra special to me because I have one of my very best friends to share her very own personal journey of unconditional love, loss, grief, and the power of letting go. Not always easy. As always, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and I invite you to walk with us as Lauren gets real, raw, and incredibly vulnerable as she shares the very many lessons that she's learned navigating some really tough life experiences. So, as you know by now, I believe that real connection is possible once we can actually take the time to understand what it means to unapologetically emerge in the world as our true and authentic selves. So join us as my beautiful friend Lauren gets ready to do just that with us today. So once again, I want to thank you for tuning in with us. And as always, you're right on time. So, hey, Lauren, without any further delays, I want to officially welcome you to the Channel for Healing podcast. I am incredibly excited to have you here with me today because I think that you'll add so much value to me, but certainly to my listeners as well. And so if you would just take a minute to kind of introduce yourself to everybody, share a little bit about yourself and what you do and what makes you tick and all the things.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm incredibly honored, especially, you're someone that I admire your strength, always that advice that you have. And I think you're so good with that. And watching you really step into your gift has been amazing over the last, it's been, I know, going on for a little while, but to really see in the last few months it really bloom has been amazing. So thank you again for having me. Yeah.
Yes,
so I am, I am a mom of two, a wife to my husband, Bob. I have a golden doodle named Marlo who is looking outside at the moment. She's like right across the way. She may interrupt us at some point.
It's okay. She's so good anytime I'm around. So
I have been in the network marketing space for almost 12 years, which has really allowed me to be present in so many different ways and really, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, be like with my family in moments that were truly, they were hard, but I needed to be with them. Right. Mm-hmm. I'm also a fellow podcaster, someone who is deeply in tune with, spirit and absolutely loving what you're doing. It's something that I definitely take the time to connect with every single day. And I am someone who believes in, personal growth and the healing process and that journey alone. And I'm someone who really, encourages people to take that time to really get to know themselves, but also to really do the work, because I think it makes such a huge difference in your life. And often joke about where we were 10 years ago versus now. It's kind of funny, right? To look back at that and
not cute, oh not cute. I know.
Not cute, but necessary, right? No. And one thing that I think you're really good at doing too is reminding me that you have to accept every part of yourself. And that was a part that we definitely were. And, it served its purpose at the time.
It did. It did. We certainly have come a long way, baby. And it definitely all was very necessary. That's for sure. I agree with that. Yeah. It is crazy because we've known each other now about, I guess, probably 11 plus years, because I started Arba not long after you. And it is really incredible to look back and see how different we are in the transformations that both of us have kind of been on really throughout the last over a decade, just with business and personal and relationships, and especially the relationship with ourselves personally, Yeah.
which never
So it's
seems to
been
end, that whole journey. You know,
no, and it
it just
shouldn't.
gets
That's a
deeper.
great point. It
Right.
shouldn't. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, you obviously know that I'm super committed to, showing up and creating the space for people to be
Mhm.
exactly who they are. And I wanted to ask you, like, why was it important for you to be here today, specifically in this space with me here today on my podcast? Why did this feel right for you? Why did you feel called to do this? Because I think that's important that, we feel aligned with certain things, but why did
Sure.
you feel specifically called to do this?
Well, I think a couple reasons. Number one, again, watching you really develop this gift and now start a podcast so that you're able to impact so many more people. I think it's to get this message out to people that there's so much more available, like love,
Mhm.
abundance, connection, when you can really work on yourself. I think that's so super important. Um, and also to like just sharing my own journey, because I know that we're not alone, in our journeys, and although my story is not going
Mhm.
to be the same as yours or some of your listeners, like there's going to be things that they can resonate with, and hopefully take some pieces that will help them in their healing journey.
Yeah.
And the other thing is too, like, what you're doing with the mediumship and spirit, like that has been deeply healing for me over the last few years. It has really helped me, just step into who I am, feel connected, and heal. Like we're probably gonna talk about my mom, heal parts of
Mhm.
me that, for like ever until I really had that, I guess, quote unquote, spiritual awakening and really stepping into that part. Like it was just one of those things that it bled into everything that I did, my relationships, my work,
Mhm.
who I was. So until I really started to connect with that, it just impacted so much, and then lastly, you have been someone who has just greatly impacted my life, and the messages that you
Thank
give
you.
me, the advice that you give me, um, you always have something of value to say, and you've allowed me to be who I am fully, even though there's times, where we butt heads or whatever, but not many, I would say. And you call me on my shit, you know what I mean? And it's just a great honor to be your friend and to be here with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That means so much to me. And it certainly goes both ways. I mean, you've been my person for a really long time. And I value your opinion, your advice, and we really are the people that can, we really are the friends to each other. I think that can really just go to each other and say, like, you're not showing up in your best self as your best self right now, or, whatever. We can really
Yeah.
shoot each other straight. And, um,
Yeah. But that took work to get
you
there.
know,
That was not always the case.
True, true. But I do think a big
Mhm.
piece of it was really eventually, right, once we learned to do this, really
Right.
create a space for each other to show up exactly as we were. Oftentimes when that wasn't really potentially sometimes the best versions of ourselves. And we really did kind
Hmm.
of accept all the parts of each other. But I don't think we were able
Hmm.
to do that until we did that for ourselves, accepted the parts of ourselves.
Exactly. And that's what I was thinking, that as soon as you started
Yeah.
going into that, like it really became
Mhm.
when we realized that how each other was showing up wasn't connected to us. It wasn't a personal thing. It wasn't like what
Mhm.
you was making me show up one way and vice versa. Like that's when I think we were really able to accept again those parts, and obviously for others too. I think when you realize that it's not all
Yeah.
about you, right? It's about people's past
Totally.
experiences. You know what I mean, and what they're dealing
Yeah.
with on a daily basis. What's going on in their head and in their heart, that's obviously impacting how they show up. Like it just makes it, I don't want to say
Mhm.
easier, um, but you're more compassionate towards that person and more forgiving and more able to listen.
Yeah. I could not agree with that more. There's a quote actually, which I'll totally butcher, I'm positive, but it says something like once you've really heard someone's true, authentic story, like you can't help but
Mhm.
fall in love with pieces of them. And it really is so true.
Yeah.
Like it really is so true. Once you realize kind of what path someone has been on or navigating, or I talked a few podcasts ago about like what, we're all carrying around these backpacks and nobody knows what's in them and we're just going through life, but everybody's
Yeah.
carrying like this, different traumas or weights or experiences in their backpacks that people don't know anything about. And once we take a minute to or get the chance to kind of take a look inside and take a peek and really connect the dots of why someone may be showing up in the ways that they are, really does allow for um, understanding. And it allows us to
Mhm.
kind of release the emotions attached to, all of the assumptions we make and the judgments we place on people. And it
Yes.
really allows all those things to kind of fall away. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so that's pretty cool. You spoke a little bit, you touched on it just a little bit about like your mom, and I know there's some other things that you were
Mhm.
navigating, but that's kind of been like an underlying theme.
Yeah.
The passing of your mom in 2017. Can you talk a little bit about that and sort of,
Sure.
I often talk about my own personal like experience of sexual abuse that I talk about a lot, and I always refer to it as like that's the best worst thing that's ever happened to me. um
Mhm.
because it's
Yeah.
allowed me to be really grateful. And I feel like you recently, when you and I had a conversation, you talked about how, I think this was actually, you and I didn't have it, I was listening to your podcast yesterday, I think you mentioned it on there, saying like, um, not that you would want to lose your mom, but that it had really created something within you that allowed you to be who you are today. Navigating that
Yeah.
journey of loss and healing. So can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about kind of how that played in your life, and
Sure.
what you want people to know
Yeah.
about that, because that's important.
So, sure. So, growing up, me and my mom, we always had this love-hate relationship. I often felt like I was a complete pain in her ass. And maybe I was in some ways, right? Like this kid that
Right. Sure.
I can be a little obnoxious times and in my personality for sure. But I always just there's always just this annoyance in a sense, with my mom and frustration. And I totally internalized that as a kid, and I was the
Mhm.
only girl. I was the oldest. And it just always seems like my brothers got away with more. Um, she was a little easier with them. And, there were times where people would say, like, wow, like, I think your mom be a little, she even said less, like, of you. And I just couldn't understand why. And it wasn't until, a little before she passed that I find out that she had her own trauma that she had dealt with as a
Mhm.
child. And it's a shame that I didn't know this until later in life, because it definitely would have, it just would have probably made things different and made me think differently about my mom. I think one thing that we don't realize as children is, now that I'm a parent, I can see it, right? Like our parents
Mhm.
were going through similar, you know, traumas or just coping with things and just life, right? But
Mhm.
as a kid, like you don't see it like that. You kind of put them on a pedestal and they're supposed to be like these superheroes and show up for you every single day in the very
Mhm.
best way. And I just, even though I wasn't wanting for anything, I just didn't have that close bond. And she did, though, a really great job of teaching me responsibility and having integrity and um, again, like encouraged me to go after my dreams and things like that. It's just, again, we didn't have like the best relationship. And so
Mhm.
um, that plays out in my life, and I can kind of get into that too later, but that plays out into my life in ways too where it just shows up as something that I felt like I was missing in myself or trying to
Mhm.
fill, with things throughout my
Yeah.
life. And again, I'll get to that. But um about 2007. So 2007, my grandfather passed away, which was her person. My mom was an only child,
Mm.
and that was her person. And, you know, I had seen my mom go through divorce from my dad, and there were some points that were like kind of hairy. But like, I was a kid, so I didn't really see the whole picture. I only saw parts of it,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't really understand everything. But when 2007, when my grandfather passed away, it really left like a gaping in my mom. And she slowly started to unroll and her drinking. And this was a woman who, could only have 3 glasses of wine and she'd be toast, right? Um, her drinking slowly started to get excessive. And she was never a nice person when she drank. Just never. Just not fun. Just nasty to me. Nasty to a lot of people around her. And it just got worse and worse. And then it got to the point where I was, I guess, 24, about to get married. And so this is about 3 years into her excessive drinking, where, she started getting into trouble. DUIs, first day at rehab. Um,
Mm.
and it just continued on and it got worse and worse. And the thing was with my mom, you know, she had her consequences, but it wasn't like it was a rock bottom where you're losing your house, you're losing your job,
Mm-hmm.
you're losing all these things. So she would often go into these places and she felt like she shouldn't be there. Like she felt like she was, sometimes I'd feel like above it, And
Mm.
what a lot of rehab facilities didn't address was the mental health piece, right? And so there was a lot of
Sure.
that going on, like the mental health with the alcoholism. And if you're not treating
Mm-hmm.
both, you're not going to beat both, right? You're not going to beat either, I
Yeah.
should say.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
True. Very true.
so I share this because it was like those 10 years from 2007 to 2017, she passed in 2017. It was a roller coaster. My life was, I was always on eggshells. I was
Mm-hmm.
waiting for the next shoe to drop. Next phone call. What do I got to go? And I was the oldest kid. And I was only, when this started, 20, when it started, I was, I guess, like 21. And then, um, through my, getting married, having my first child, all that, I'm dealing with this and starting a business and
Mm-hmm.
navigating this. And it was just always, again, like that fear of what's going to happen next. And so it's just a really
Right.
shitty place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually, she ended up passing away in 2017 from complications from, excessive drinking over the last 10 years. She died alone, unfortunately, which, and I was the first one on the scene. So it was not just like grief, but it was like that guilt of what else could I have done?
Mm-hmm.
Never feeling like I was going to be able to repair that relationship because, like we just, there were times where we wouldn't talk, or, we would be in the middle of whatever, like we just would always be at odds, with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't, like I said, just the grief of loss. It was like, I'm never going to be able to repair this, like ever,
Right.
until one
So
day
no
I pass
closure.
away. You know what I mean? No
Mm-hmm.
closure. And it really sucked. And I was
Yeah.
really angry. I don't know if you remember how
Mm-hmm.
angry I was. I was
I
always
do.
angry during the whole process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was angry. And when she passed away, it didn't go away. It got
Mm-hmm.
worse to a certain extent. So,
Yeah.
you know, it was hard to navigate that.
Yeah. I mean, trauma, right? Your mom's trauma that she experienced,
Mm-hmm.
which whatever led her to feel like she needed to drink to kind of escape that, trauma. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, yours with experiencing her navigating that and trying to navigate that. And then her passing with this, what feels like unfinished business, right? And no closure and no resolution. Trauma is, that's what I talk about oftentimes. Trauma is such a personal experience, and it's, people think that it's about whatever the actual trauma is, the thing that's happening outside of your body, and that's actually not really always. I don't think that's really ever the case. It's not necessarily about what happens to you. It's about how you experience what happens to you, because everybody's different, and that's why it is so personal. And,
Right.
it causes us to tell ourselves these stories, and these stories that we tell ourselves change how we show up in the world. And I think,
Mm-hmm.
I can certainly speak to that about my own experiences and my own traumas and my own abuse growing up as a child. And, you're touching on that now, how that showed up for you, these stories that you told yourself that,
Mm-hmm.
I know you and I have talked a bit about like how that kind of for you sort of led to, while your mom was still here, this feeling of unworthiness, but then of course, certainly
Yeah.
once she was gone, because there was no resolution. Can you talk a little bit about that
Mm-hmm.
feeling of unworthiness that you were feeling, and kind of
Mm-hmm.
how you, where your shift came in, and kind of how that came in, where you realized that
Sure.
that wasn't tied to something external or your mom, or so
Yeah.
would you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So growing up, with my mom, you very rarely heard, "I'm proud of you," And so
Mm-hmm.
from a young age, to try to please my mom, I would do things to try to earn that, try to earn that
Mm-hmm.
love, try to earn that good job. So
Yeah.
from my performance at school to like whatever, appearance, um, whatever it was, like I was always just searching for that. And it I tied my worthiness to my productivity, to
Mm-hmm.
what I was doing for work, buying a house at a young age, like whatever it was, and it bled into everything. And it's still something that I have a hard time sometimes with. Like I have to catch it a lot because it still shows up for
Mm-hmm.
me where, in the career that I have right now, I have a lot of opportunities to earn accolades and, titles and just different trips and things like that. And it's a performance based business. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like a double edged sword for me because I love that.
Yeah.
I can, you know, work hard towards what it is that I want. But at the same time, there's been instances where I've caught myself, feeling unworthy, feeling less than because again, if I didn't perform a certain way or earn a certain
Mm-hmm.
thing, I'm down on myself because then I just feel like, well, what am I doing? Like I'm not deserving. I'm not the best leader. I'm not, again, successful because
Mm-hmm.
I'm not out there, freaking lighting fires all the time,
Not enough.
and not enough, right? And I even have it
Mm-hmm.
tattooed that I am enough because I needed that reminder.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and then it goes back to too, like, listen, she was in and out of rehab so many times, and there's so many conversations where I would plead with her, like, I'm your child. You have two other kids here. Like, are we not enough for you to get better? And so, like in my
Mm-hmm.
head, I'm thinking again, I'm putting it on. It's about us. Like we're not enough for her. When really it was
Mm-hmm.
never that. It was never that.
Of
It was
course.
her own trauma. It was her own things, right? But like as a child, when your parent is quote unquote supposed to unconditionally love you,
Mm-hmm.
it really feels terrible when you're
Mm-hmm.
pleading with someone to like get a grip on their life so that they can be here with you and with their grandchildren. And you take it as they're not willing to do that. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
you
that's how
mentioned
it
like
kind of
being
like
a
showed up.
yeah, you mentioned
Mhm.
being like when you're a child, how difficult it is. And I think that's a great point, but I think it's not just when you're a child, right? Like when you're feeling that way as a
Right.
child, and then like that just doesn't change once you become an adult. Like it's not like, oh, now I see it, like that comes with so much emotional baggage, right? Like you spoke about the unworthiness, the feeling like you weren't enough, like you got this tattooed on you. I like the point that you brought up when you said like, sometimes this still creeps up, right? This feeling of unworthiness or not being enough, or I
Oh
need to
yeah.
keep chasing these things.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want anybody listening to really recognize is that should always be part of the process, because these triggers that we have, these things that come up, these emotional wounds, even I don't care how far along you are on your healing journey, those things will continue to pop up. But the healing part comes in is when you're doing exactly what you're doing, right? You're able to catch it. You're able to identify it and say, I know what this is tied to. This feels
Yeah.
familiar. This might not be really about what's happening right now, but this feels a lot like the 7-year-old was feeling when, or
Yeah.
however old you are, when I was experiencing these things. It just feels familiar. And then, so you're feeling what you're feeling by being triggered in the moment, but then it's compounded by all the other times you experience
Mm-hmm.
that feeling, or that thing that, made you feel that sense of unworthiness, or that you weren't enough, or that you
Mm-hmm.
had to be doing more, or showing up differently or better, or whatever. So I liked that you kind of touched on both of those things, but it really is such a um like a continuous journey, this journey
Yeah.
of healing. It really is about that navigating. It really is about, we don't just like go to this, we're not like, we're here, we're healed. Like, it really is this
Right.
constant road, this path that we travel of continuing to become more aware and understand better, and ask
Mm-hmm.
questions to ourselves or to someone else who maybe we need a little more clarity from, or um whatever. At what point did you realize, um like, okay, I like, this is not an external thing, like, I am my best healer?
Mm-hmm.
And like, when did you, and you may not even be there, I mean, this is a question only you can answer, but like, was there a point where you found like, okay, this is not, I don't need closure maybe in the way I think I need closure. Like, I can still have closure even though my mom's gone. I can still feel resolution even though my mom's already passed. Like, talk a little bit about that,
Yeah.
if you're there, and if you are still getting
Sure.
there.
I mean, I think that grief is something that's going to be forever. Like that's something, and it's one of
Mhm.
those, again, continuous journeys. However, I do feel closure now. I do feel, I know that I'm worthy. I know that it was
Mhm.
never my burden, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
it-
it's important.
I'm still navigating that. But I remember, I went to my friend's house, and her mom, and I was telling anger, and she said, Lauren, she's like, you know how like you make a decision in like your business and you just make like a decision and you just move forward. And I said, yeah, I totally understand that. She's like, I need you to let go of the anger and choose, like, you don't have to forgive your mom, but you need to give up your anger. Like, you need to give it to God, give it
Mhm.
to whatever, like, give it away. It's not yours. And she's like, and if
Mhm.
you need to do that every single day, at every single hour, sometimes every single minute, like keep
Mhm.
deciding. And it
Mhm.
was like one of those things where it just like clicked for me. And I'm like, okay, like I can do that. I can like give that away. It's not mine. And so I started
Mhm.
to do that. I started to like, the anger's not mine. Like it's just like, literally was like flipping a light switch for me. And I
Mhm.
started again like doing the inner work, and um and I can't, I mean, therapy, yes, I went to therapy. I am someone who, obviously I'm a podcaster. I listen to podcasts all the time. I'm a reader.
Yeah.
I just really started going inward, and again recognizing that it was never about me. And
Mhm.
uh talking about my mom, talking about like kind of went on, like it just slowly started, like the anger part anyway started to just kind of like, go away and lift. And I got to the point where again it was almost like I was certain that, okay, my mom was sick, and
Mhm.
that's why she created the kind of trauma that she had in her life. She created same kind of like trauma or chaos in hers. And if I'm going, heal from this, I'm going to heal not just like me and future generations, but like I'll be able to heal her and my grandmom and you
Mhm.
know, that past. And um so I can't really even give you like a certain time where it just like all kind of came together, because again, it's been a progression. And I am certain that I'm here to heal that. Like I think that most times trauma is cyclical, you know, and
Mhm.
I don't know, you know, again, what the past were, but like I just know what my mom had to deal with. And I think I came here to be the one to stop that, you know, to really stop that
Mhm.
trauma for continuing on. And, you know, like you mentioned earlier, yes, I do wish my mom was still here. And at the same time, it is the best, worst thing that ever happened to me,
Mhm.
because it changed everything. It changed just how I show up. It changed, again, how I interact with my kids. Um, and you know, it helped heal a lot of things, you know,
Mhm.
going forward. um so yeah, I mean, that's how I'm, you know, it's changed now and how I'm continuing on with that journey.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And I've talked to you. I think I might have even talked to you about it when I was a guest on your podcast, and I said like the enemy of connection is control, and I think that we hold on to that anger
Yes.
and we're unable to forgive for so long. I mean, that was certainly the case with me for, I mean,
Hmm.
decades. um, until we can really give up that control and stop trying to write the narrative before we really do the work of healing and understanding and accepting ourselves for who we are. And I love that you started to and continue to give yourself the opportunity to make new choices and to like
Hmm.
catch yourself and acknowledge that this was not yours to carry, that this, your mom having an issue with alcohol was totally separate from, your path and your journey in life, though it is connected and intertwined and did play a huge part of who you are.
Hmm. Hmm.
Learning to kind of accept those things about her and recognize that, it's not that you weren't worthy enough. It's just that she was battling her own demons. um,
Right.
and she was doing the best that she could. She was doing the best she could, and
Yeah.
that's what we do, right? We just do the best that we can. Everybody is kind of just doing the best that we can.
I think
It's
that's a great
interesting.
point
Like,
too.
go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was gonna say, I think
No.
that's a great point, is that recognizing that, you know, we all are doing the best we can. And I think that for anyone who
Mm-hmm.
may be like harboring any kind of resentment or anger for maybe their own childhood, or, you know, or even what's going on now, like we do have to remember, again, like you were saying, people are walking around with their own trauma and their own, you
Mm-hmm.
know, burdens. And I think that if we could all just show each other a little more compassion, you know, the world would be,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a different place. And the one thing too, you know, you may ask me this too, but the other thing that's really helped is really connecting with her from the other side, you know, which you have been
Mm-hmm.
able to help me with a lot. And another, you know, friend of ours, Mitch, you know, he helped
Mm-hmm.
connect me with my mom. And, you know, really just that recognizing too, like, hey, she's still here. She can hear me, you know, to talk to
Mm-hmm.
her, to ask her to be with me. And, you know, one of the messages I did get back in November from her was to talk to her like she's here so that she can
Mm-hmm.
be the kind of mom that, even though she couldn't do that here on Earth's side,
Mm-hmm.
connection, and she still would like to be a part of our lives. And so as soon as I
Mm-hmm.
got that message, you know, it's like, all right, if that's what you want, like I'm going to talk to you every day. I'm going to ask for your guidance every day. I'm going to ask you to show
Mm-hmm.
me like a clear path. And I do feel that there's so many times where I am and was protected from, you know, things because I'm connected in that sense, you know?
Mm-hmm. I do think that that is so important when we can kind of, not ignore our pain, not push it away, not tuck it away, really face it head on, acknowledge it, but also
Mhm.
move forward in healthy ways, um,
Mhm.
it can be so incredibly healing. And I think it is important to, and you touched on it. You said, you began to you began to ask her to help me. I do need help with this, right? I need help navigating these emotions or these feelings. I need a sign. I need to know you're there. I think a lot of people don't really recognize that our loved ones, once they cross, they are still with us all the time, but they won't always they don't often jump in and mess with our free will. We have to ask for what we need, the same way, as my friend, I would say, Lauren, I need your help with this, right? You know what I mean? You're not just going
Right.
to jump in and um and
Yeah.
it's almost like we kind of have to give them permission to show up in our lives the way that we want them to or need them to. So I love
Mhm.
that you are becoming more tuned into that, and more aware of your mom's presence, especially in a way. It's really beautiful that she's able to be here for you now, especially in a way that she was not able to be here in the physical world because of the
Mhm.
things that she was kind of battling with and navigating herself. And um, I think that that's kind of the beauty of the best worst things that happen to us, right? Is that
Mhm.
when we find when we need to heal, right? When a soul needs to heal, when a person needs to heal, we really find ourselves at the feet of growth. It's ugly, like real
Yeah.
messy at times.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not often
Uh-huh.
pretty. And I think that's the mistake people often make, is that they just want to stop feeling the way that they're feeling. Like they just want this feeling to end. I don't feel
Right.
like I want to. It doesn't feel good. It hurts. And it's messy. And
Yeah.
like I always kind of say, oh, if it sucks, you're on the right track. Lean into
Yeah,
that,
because I did that
surrender
too.
to that.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a time
Yeah.
where I
So.
was numbing myself. I was numbing the pain or
Mm-hmm.
bulldozing through it, or, because I can put on that face of like, we're just going to plow right through this and we're not going to feel a thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it always will catch up to you. Like it doesn't disappear. The pain will still be there.
Yeah.
And I had to learn that lesson too.
I,
Hmm.
and it is so important. And I remember even on your podcast, when I was on your podcast, and you and Megan, Megan had a certain impression of me when she first met me. And you even said to me, I had no idea. When I had said there were days I felt like I couldn't get from one day to the next. And you said, you never would have known that. You would never have known that. And that's the thing. We get really good at kind of
Hmm.
operating from this place of disguise, right? Of oh, I have to look perfect. I have to camouflage how I really am. I can't show up the way that I feel like maybe I need to, or that I really am, because it feels scary. It feels vulnerable. It feels
Right.
like we're not protected. And I know for me back then, that was just not an option. So it was oh, let me just I'll make jokes, or I'll make light of something, or if I look
Hmm.
perfect on the outside, no one's going to really get to see how
Right.
damaged I am or feel, on the inside. They won't even question anything. And that is really what happened. And that is just, that just did not serve me well. I know, you navigating in that way didn't serve you well either. Um,
Right.
yeah. So, um, it's funny too. I always say, don't confuse your behavior with who you are. Right. I think, and like I was saying earlier, those stories that we tell ourselves change how we show up in the world. So oftentimes I
Hmm.
know for myself, when um, I was feeling badly for ways that I was showing up in the world, or if I was judging somebody or gossiping. And that can
Hmm.
start to change how you show up in the world too, because you feel like a bad person, you feel not worthy, you feel like you're not good enough. And that compounds all these other traumas you experience. And I think it's so important to really to really remind ourselves and to remind others that, our we can't confuse those two things. They can so easily be confused, but it's so important to be reminded that, our choices and our behavior is not who we are, that those things can change. We can
Yeah.
change. And I don't even think it's a becoming. I've said this before. I don't think it's a becoming something other than what we are, what we were. I think it's an unbecoming. I think we're stripping away all those things that just didn't serve us. I don't think we need to be better than we
Yeah.
were. I think it's different. It's just learning kind of
Yeah.
what works for us and what doesn't, and how we can best not only serve our spirit and our soul, but others in a way that adds value. to other people as well. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very easy to kind of confuse those two things. And um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think you've said to me before, I don't think I've ever heard this quote before, ironically, because I love quotes, but like you've said to me, like new level, new devil, right? Like I love that. I thought it was like
Yeah.
so powerful. And that's like so
Mm-hmm.
true. So can you talk about like even through this journey of healing that you're going through and recognizing these, that you are worthy, right? That you are enough, but that you need
Mm-hmm.
reminders of that sometimes, and you have to
Yeah.
catch it and
Yes.
check it and kind of
Mm-hmm.
change how you're navigating forward. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit, that transition of you know, as you continue to dive deeper and ascend higher, like vibrate higher because you're diving deeper, how is that like, what are the new things that you're experiencing that may feel hard or complicated or challenging that you're kind of having to motor through? And I can kind of, off the top of my head, I know surrender is something you're trying to lean into that you've really
Mm-hmm.
kind of struggled with. Can you talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I think that you were probably maybe the first one to really like call it out. You know, the surrender part. And it's because and you've kind of touched on it already too. Like control was something that was huge in my life because
Mm,
I couldn't control anything else in my life, meaning like
mhm,
everything was unpredictable. Once, like, I mean, even probably before my parents' divorce, but, you know, them getting divorced, you know, not knowing, say, who my dad was dating or who, you know, who I would meet next. And my mom not
mhm.
knowing what kind of mood she would be in.
Yeah.
You know, like I was raised in like this environment of unpredictability. And then
Mhm,
it carried through in my life. Well, I need to protect myself and control as much as I can. And so it showed up in
mhm,
relationships, showed up in my marriage, it showed up with money, it showed up with, um, you know, not sharing certain things, like not informing people. I don't want to say like keeping secrets, but in a way, like because I don't want to then like I'm not sure how that person will react or I don't want to be told
mhm.
no or you know things like that and so
Yeah.
it played out in almost every single way it could in my life in my career my business it meant trying to control as much as I can probably even micromanage at times so that I knew
Mhm,
what my outcome would be you know and I think I said this to you not that long ago. Like it was like one of those things where I finally realized like this year in 2024, like last year my word was trust, that I needed to trust more, that things would work out as they should and to like kind of like go with that. But the lessons really started to deepen this year than ever. And I realized that, you know, if I continue to keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to keep getting what I'm getting. And that meant
mhm,
that there was a love surrender that I had to really as I was still in having that control. And at one point, I think this was very it's almost like I had this I was like activated and it was almost like I felt like a facade. Like I've built my life on
mm,
like I don't want to say fakeness, but like in my own bubble to protect myself and it's not exactly reality if that makes
mhm.
sense
Totally.
um and just really like peeling back the layers even more and being truthful in every which way, even though it was super scary. Like I was scared to death to share certain things because I wasn't sure of the reaction that I was going to get. But at the same time, like if I didn't do that, I felt like I was going to continue living in this facade, you know? Um,
Mhm,
so I'm continuing to really dive into that. I'm continuing to really continue to surrender and trust. And it's funny. And I've told, like, I'll text you sometimes and I'll be like, I was feeling this way. And then this and this happened. And I feel like it's like God, universe, whoever, like just showing me, like, I told you to trust. And when you do, look what shows
Mm-hmm.
up for you. Like all that abundance that you seek, all that love that you seek, when you learn to let go and not hold on to it so
Mm-hmm.
tightly or try to control so much, you're gonna get what you want. But like, I don't know if anyone's
Mm-hmm.
ever seen like that cartoon. It's like, I think it's like God or Jesus, like this big teddy bear behind his back. And then it's like a
Oh
little
yeah.
girl holding this tiny teddy bear. And he's like telling, and the question is
Mm-hmm.
like, do you trust me? And like he wants her to give up the
Yep.
teddy bear, that little teddy bear, because he did something better for her back, right? And it's kind of like that. It's like
Yep.
surrendering the things that are
Mm-hmm.
good and trusting that even better is coming. But that's really hard and scary and feels unsafe sometimes, you know? It's that
It
vulnerability.
is
It's that
hard.
yourself be open to
Mm-hmm.
trust or be open to hurt. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I love that analogy with the teddy bear. But I also love how you touched on, does it all go back to that control, that need to have control to establish that sense of safety and protection, right? And I think a lot of times we feel the need to keep control of certain situations because we oftentimes make assumptions of how someone else or will respond or show up or not show up. Most often, I know that was the case for me. I was like, they're
Right.
not, I'm not asking for what I need because I'm be disappointed if they don't show up. And um
Right.
like, no, why aren't I worth it to everybody, right? So I think we make these assumptions
Right.
because we're afraid. And then we're afraid to ask questions. We're afraid to ask for what we need. We're afraid to show up as our authentic selves. When really, I think oftentimes all we really need is like a little more clarity, a little more time, a little more um, stillness to sit in that space of like really asking ourselves, what is it that I need? You know.
Right.
So how did you? I know you would oftentimes call me or text me and say like, I know this is about surrender. Like I know this is about this, but like, how do I do that? How do I surrender? Like it just feels so hard. Um, so in those really hard moments that you've reached out to me, or even the times that you didn't, when you just felt like you were really struggling to, like, knowing that you needed to let go, knowing that you needed to release control and surrender and kind of lean in and sit with this discomfort that felt
Yeah.
like literally physically painful at times, how did you, like, how and why did you start to continue to do that, and what have you kind of seen as a result of really continuing to just like, okay, I need to trust, I need to.
Right. Well, the why is, again, knowing that there's so much more available and continuing like to do like,
Mm-hmm.
the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting
Yeah,
a
of
different
course.
result. Like that's kind of like the boat that I was in. Um, and then the how really, it, it's really about getting as present as possible. When it comes to
Mm-hmm.
surrender, like a really good example too was, I was in Disney World a couple weeks ago with my family, and you know, I can work from wherever because I can work from my phone. And I decided that, listen, I'm going to be gone a week, but everything will be okay. Yes, there's a lot going on. Like I'll be able to check in
Mm-hmm.
here and there, but like I'm going to be off my phone and I'm going to be fully present with my family. And I trust that I'm going to be taken care of. My business is going to run without me. Like whatever's meant to be will be, basically. I
Mm-hmm.
used to say, and
Yeah.
actually know this saying, it's meant to be to me, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like, shitty saying, like, oh my God, right? Like, I know. Um, I really, it's again, stepping into that surrender and trust really means like literally committed but not attached. I am committed
Mm-hmm.
to doing X, Y, and Z, but I am not attached to the results, right? And that can go for relationships, work, whatever it may be, right? I am
Mm-hmm.
committed to doing what I said I was going to do, but I'm not going to, if I don't get the desired result, then go in and try to manipulate things, right? So it's really
Yes.
letting things be, man. Like really getting,
Mhm.
like you said, still, like focusing on my breathing, getting outside, taking a walk. If I find myself getting like all wound up, which I often do still, right? I'm a very heady
Same.
person.
Same.
I get outside, right? I put my feet in the grass.
Mhm.
I focus on, sometimes it's like as simple as my dog, like she's next to me, like maybe just like really looking at her and petting her and looking at her in the eyes, like silly things, right? Or journaling is another way that I like to like get out of my head and dump
Yeah.
it like onto the paper. Um, Meditation. I mean, I am really just working on like getting my mind more still, because it is
Mhm.
sometimes it's a source of inspiration, but it's also a source of freaking anxiety sometimes, because I am, like I said,
Yeah.
I get caught in my head a lot. And the gratitude piece too, like truly trying to
Mhm.
feel grateful. And I'm not just saying like I'm grateful for something, I mean feel
Mhm.
the gratitude has really helped with the
Yeah.
anxiety, and also with back to being present, and sometimes, you will find me like doing this out loud, where I'm
Mhm.
saying these things and really trying to like focus again on that feeling. um and again, it's a knowing, there's sometimes there's no other way to say it other than it's a knowing too, that everything is working as exactly as it should be. um
Mhm.
Not
Yeah.
resisting things, you know what I mean, allowing things
Mhm.
to, like, for example, another one is, before, if I say had a cancellation, right, or again with a business thing, I didn't get the desired result, I used to get so upset about it, and now I'm like, you know what, that's exactly how that's supposed to work out. So, this or something better is coming my way, you know.
Mhm. It is so, so true. I think a lot of times we often operate from this space. I know I did for majority of my life, right? Like if I hit a rough patch in my life or if things weren't going perfectly, I just like wanted to get through it. Like, oh, like this just feels awful, right? Like, why is this happening to me? Like, why me? Why me?
Yeah.
Whatever. But I think what a lot of people don't understand is we develop a very expanded state of awareness through life's ups and downs. That's
Mm-hmm.
what allows us to have that expanded state of awareness. And but that's if you allow it, it's if you lean in, it's if you can sit in that discomfort,
Yeah.
and sit in stillness. And I couldn't agree with you more. I think gratitude is so incredibly important. I think I mean, I talk about this on my podcast all the time about how I love going to therapy. It's like my one non-negotiable every week. It's like my 1 hour that I can just talk about what's happening in my life and decompress. And it's like my gym membership. And I say, at the end of my therapy session every week, my therapist says, okay, let's like breathe. And she's like such a good vibe. I just like adore her so much. And like at the end of it, she always says, like, what do you want? Like, what do you want to take away from this? And literally for like the last probably 6 weeks, I'm like, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but like, I feel like the more grateful that I am, the more I can find gratitude really in everything and see, like, especially the hardest parts of my life, the best, worst things that ever happened to me, finding gratitude in
Mm-hmm.
those things has literally made all the difference. And it's created so much more abundance in my life and allowed me to
Mm-hmm.
connect with people on such a different way. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and has just opened up so many different opportunities to connect with myself. But then that connection has allowed me to connect with other people in different and meaningful ways. And I think that's, what people don't realize when they're resistant, because they are trying to kind of maintain that control, um,
Right.
and kind of be like when you're so tied to the outcome. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that you kind of being able to surrender to sort of all of this that we've talked about, right? Like the surrendering to the loss of your mom, surrendering really and leaning into that feeling of like things being unresolved and not really having
Mm-hmm.
closure, not being able to kind of tie a nice, neat little bow on this, like we like to, you and I especially, right?
Right.
Um, like how you've been able to do that, and like I can really see how that's showing up in your life, in your world, in your business, in your relationships, in the way that you're literally showing up in the world. Like you're it's just like a different energy, it's a different light. And when you're able to
Yeah.
do that, it shines a light on other people that would not be there otherwise. So that's why I think this
Mm-hmm.
work, this internal work, this personal work, this growth, this healing is so important for everyone to
Mm-hmm.
do and really kind of lean into, because a lot of times, I know for me in the beginning of this journey, I was like, it's all about me, like why, like me. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
now I realize, because I have such an expanded state of awareness, like, we are so connected. All of us are so connected. Like, I'm no different
Right.
than me. I'm no different than the person that chose to hurt me. Like, I have empathy and compassion for him. Like, all those things. I think it just allows for so much grace and such a deeper connection. But so now that you've kind of been able to do that and see how that is sort of playing out differently in your life and allowing you to show up in different and more meaningful ways, not just for other people, but especially for yourself. Um, how do you feel like, I mean, I've seen it. I can tell you how I see it playing out in your life, but tell everybody who doesn't know you how that is allowing you to have a deeper spiritual connection, maybe be more aware of, um, that connection you have to your mom or other people that you've lost in your life, and really feel guided spiritually, not just by your own spirit, but your loved ones and your angels and your guides, and kind of that knowing and that trust. Like, how is that showing up for you now differently than you feel like you were able to see it before? Because it was showing up, you just weren't seeing it.
Right. So I guess, I'm starting to see more of the signs that they are here with me. I
Mhm.
feel supported, I feel like that sense of like everything is going to work out just as it's supposed to be,
Yeah.
and I'm okay with it. Um, Whereas before I was still very much stuck in like that masculine energy of like, I'm going to do like all of the self-help and personal growth things, but I'm not going to like tie it all together. You know what I mean? Or I'm not going to
Yeah.
like, be open to the lesson. It was like, I'm going to do the
Hmm.
work, but I'm not going to like integrate the work. There's a difference between doing the work and actually doing the work and then integrating it into your life. Right? That's a huge
Yes.
difference. And so now
Huge.
it's like slowing down because I like to go fast, right? That's one thing you do
Hmm.
too. Um,
Yes, yes, yes.
this I like to beat my GPS. But yeah, slowing down,
It's a challenge.
and it's a challenge, right? We all like a challenge.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
Slowing down and just and connecting the dots and listening more. I
Hmm.
used to, again, same, like going back to doing all the things, like, okay, I'm gonna journal, and I'm gonna meditate, and I'm gonna read, and I'm gonna listen to a podcast, and I'm gonna go for a walk, and I'm just filling my day and my mind with more busyness. And I
Hmm.
found that I just need to let more of that fall away and get quiet and get
Hmm.
still. And I'm going to hear what I need to hear, and I'm going to feel what I need to feel. Um, so I'm really starting to develop more of that intuition. I'm starting to really
Hmm.
like trust myself too, which is something that you've encouraged me a lot over the last, few weeks, about like really learning to trust that I don't need to search for any more freaking answers outside of myself, right? I have everything
Hmm.
I
So
need,
true.
and I have a team of people behind me that are like eager to give me guidance, but I just have to like really, again, get quiet and slow down, and to be able to receive that.
That's amazing. And that's a really great point. I love that you mentioned, like, you're really starting to trust your intuition. And I think what a lot of people don't recognize is that intuition really starts with a really keen sense of the freaking obvious. Like, but we don't pay attention to it because we're thinking about, like, we're worried about something from the past. Could this happen again? Or fearing what could potentially happen in the future,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just being present. Exactly what you were saying, right? Like, just sitting in stillness, being aware, listening, feeling, what is your
Mm-hmm.
body feeling, like, what's your body telling you, like, listening to those things, dropping into your breath, meditating, not just like, oh, I have to journal today, check, I have to meditate today, check. It's like, no, it's not, I'm not doing these things because I have to or I need to. It's like this is
Right.
what my body needs, but I need to be present in those moments. So
Yeah.
much about being present, which I love. I mean, the reality, and I said this before, like, right, I am my best healer. You are your best healer. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we
Mm-hmm.
spend so much of our lives looking externally for these things to
Mm-hmm.
validate us in our lives when really everything can really be found within. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about your best worst thing to date. You know, obviously, the reason that we feel unsettled oftentimes is because we're not supposed to settle. But there's a very fine line between realizing we're not supposed to settle and surrendering and releasing the control, right?
Right.
And not having
Right.
feeling like we have to race from one thing to another thing. Um,
Yeah.
so I wanted to ask you about where in your life are you finding the difference between when you're operating from that ego energy, right, which is
Mm-hmm.
competitive and demanding and wants to be in control, versus that soul energy? Like, where are you finding a difference now, or recognizing where you were operating from ego and now you're operating from your soul energy?
Yeah. I mean, I think I get into that mode of like worry, when I start worrying about, do I have all the right answers? Like, is what I want coming? Um, just like worry in general, like that's the ego
Yeah.
trying to protect me and trying to get me into like
Mm-hmm.
almost like that scarcity mode so that I go and I take some action and masculinize whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, right? That
Yeah.
it feels like I should do. Whereas like the soul is like trust, right? Like that's the biggest, I think,
Mm-hmm.
difference for me is like when you're in that present, you know, mode, that mentality, however you want to say it, and you can really trust that. Listen, like everything is going to ebb and flow, and it's like it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
you just gotta. It sounds easier said than done, and it is. It's easier said than done, but it's almost like letting things kind of just like pass through. Some come in, some go out, and being okay with that. I think that's like the soul. That's me recognizing, operating from a sense of soul. I also think too that connection, right? So not getting I don't want to say upset because we're human. We do get upset still, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
ego is the one that gets mad and jealous and um,
Mm-hmm.
making stories or assumptions from other people, where the soul's like, all right, like no worries. You know what I mean? It's kind of like they show
Mm-hmm.
up as they are and it has nothing to do with you, and you realize that. And so then you don't take
So
things
true.
personally and you don't make assumptions about things. So it's just, I really more ego's super uptight and soul is like laid back, cool, calm, and collected. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's like the only way I
Yeah,
can
not
really
worried
like
at all.
maybe describe it for you.
Yeah, no, I
Mm-hmm.
love that. I love that. So just a couple more things I want to ask you. So I believe, I
Mm-hmm.
feel, I know that you believe this as well, but that everybody is created with purpose, on purpose. So
Mm-hmm.
talk to me, tell me what is your purpose? I know because we're like besties, but tell everybody else, what is your purpose, and what are you fulfilling that purpose and how?
Yeah. So my purpose, twofold, I guess. Number one, I think my main purpose here is to really, um, I guess, be that change maker, be the person who's going to shake shit up, be the person who
Mm-hmm.
may have wild ideas and may seem sometimes out of the box, but like my intentions are to kind of break you out of the habit of whatever it is that you're in and break you out of those limiting beliefs and really show you that again there is so much more love and abundance on the other side of healing. um
Mm-hmm.
Personally, as far as my family goes, I mean, I think that I am the conduit. I think I am the one who came to be the messenger to help heal again, like my mom and past generations, and then going forward, so that we aren't going to experience that, cyclical trauma. Um, so I think it's really breaking. repetitive habits, breaking the trauma,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and really living from a place of like freedom, I guess, in a sense, right? Like free of like, again, the chains of, again, trauma and old beliefs or limiting beliefs. Really just leaning into I, love and abundance
Mm-hmm.
and peace within, because I think that for a long time, I didn't experience that. And there's still obviously times where I
Mm-hmm.
feel like there's like, I'm at war on the inside, right? But like
Yeah, of course.
overall, I want that sense of peace, not just for myself, but for everyone else. And that comes with like acceptance of your own self and really loving yourself.
I think that's a great point. I think, there's a quote that says, like, we're best equipped to heal the person that we used to be. Um,
Yes.
and I think
Yes.
it's so important that you're using your voice and you're sharing your experience, and you're leaning in. I know, like, your reel the other day, you were like, I had a meltdown this morning, and I just like
Hmm.
felt like a gut check because I read something or I saw something, and it just made me feel like, am I showing up the way I need to be showing up? And I think that that's
Yeah.
so important to take those opportunities, because your name is going to be in rooms that your feet never entered, because someone's being inspired by you showing up and being vulnerable in a way that maybe they're
Hmm.
not able or ready to do at the moment. But it's going to shine a little bit of
Yeah.
light that wasn't there before, and allow someone to maybe see a glimpse of themselves in you, right? Because we're all mirrors.
Hmm.
um,
Right.
and will really
Right.
allow them to do that. So I love that. So the next thing I want to ask you is, we talked earlier about how over the last decade plus that we've known each other, especially, we have like really come a long way.
Right.
Gosh, it's like so amazing when I think of, I'm like, woo, sister. Um,
Right.
but how is your, yeah, oh yeah. I'm really proud of us. I gotta say, I'm really
I
freaking
am
proud of us.
too. I am too.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing when you can be like, literally write the ending to your own story. That's like real
Yeah.
freedom, like it's not
Hmm.
just what's happened to you or what your experiences have been, but what you really choose to put in the world. And so I want to ask you, how is your best better than it used to be?
How is my best better than it used to be? Ooh.
Because it's a lot different now than it was 10 or 11, 12 years ago.
Oh man. Well, first off, I'm showing up without a chip on my shoulder now.
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, totally operating from a place of trying to prove myself, trying to
Mm-hmm.
seek out that external validation, that acceptance, that love. And really, I just needed to go inwards and love myself and accept myself the whole freaking time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, I always was someone who was deeply interested in connecting with others, always.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes maybe because I didn't want to connect with myself, it was easier to connect with other
Totally.
people than it
Mm-hmm.
was to connect with myself. Because let's be honest, like when you got to peel back all the layers yourself, it fucking hurts sometimes and it's ugly and
Scary.
it's
Yeah.
scary.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that vulnerability is one of those things. Like I believe in vulnerability being power and
Mm-hmm.
connection, right? That is where you connect with people. And so I would just, encourage that girl 10, 11 years ago to really start being more vulnerable, start
Mm-hmm.
like taking off all the bullshit of what people have put on you and or what you think you should be, right? And just be
Mm-hmm.
you and get to know yourself, get to trust yourself, get to love yourself, accept yourself.
I love that. I love that. It's so powerful. It's so powerful when you can, like what you were talking about, the things that kind of held you back before, are the same things I felt like held me back before. And it was just fear. It was just being afraid of being
Yeah.
judged or not being accepted or
Yeah.
not feeling as valued as I wanted to feel. And it was like really looking
Hmm.
externally. But when you can really make that connection within and, you know, commit to learning all of the beautiful pieces of who you are, regardless of what that looks like, it can really
Mm-hmm.
change how you see the world. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that this is going to make me cry, but um
Oh.
so so what can people find you doing? What are you up to? Where are you if people want to find you and hear more about Lauren Wheeler extraordinaire? What can they find you doing, and where can they find you?
Sure. So you can find me at Lauren __ Wheeler __ on Instagram, or on Facebook. You can find me. Always open to a DM. I am someone who I know, like 10 years ago, we probably didn't seem so approachable, Ash, but I think
No,
now,
definitely not.
I think now, super approachable and super like open to conversation always, and
Mhm.
encourage again that vulnerability and conversation. I am, you know, a lot of times you can find me nowadays either on a motocross track, a football field, a soccer field, or a dance studio, depending on what my kids are doing. Um, but I'm also out in nature a lot, walking my dog.
Mhm.
Um, I am working from home, on my Arbonne business, and we are working on some huge goals. And you know, behind the scenes on that too, it's really about empowering people to get started or continue that personal growth journey. That's really what, even
Mhm.
though it's a health and wellness company, yes, but like, you know, this already, like, deep
Yeah.
down, we are really equipping people with the tools they need to work on themselves, which again bleeds into everything in their life. And
Totally.
you can find me podcasting on Shattering Ceilings. That's the podcast that me and my friend Megan, we host, and we release episodes every Tuesday. And you can soon find me in the coaching space outside of, my Arbonne business. Right now, I'm working on getting certified on human design, which has really been something that's helped me get to know myself further and understand what my gifts are and maybe the things that I need help with. And to be able to also understand other people. Like I read, I know Ashley's, and I know like all my
Yeah.
close friends, so I understand too, like how to just again like them, and also like understand their strengths and maybe what they need help with, and give them some guidance there.
Mhm.
So, um, you know, my true passion is it's really coaching people and empowering people. And so no matter where you find me, you would know that I would be always up for giving you a word of encouragement or some love.
Yeah, totally. I love the human design piece that you're diving into now. It really is so fascinating because it's just like really just another tool to
Mm-hmm.
be able to help you navigate life, knowing your strengths and weaknesses. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so that is really cool. I love kind of learning more about that through you, and sort of what you're kind of venturing into now. So I think that's going to
Mm-hmm.
continue. You always add value to people, but I think now you're going to be able to do this in just a grander capacity, which I think is really, it's incredible. And I think it's what people are looking for. I think a lot of people really are craving this ability to step into their own purpose, but they're not really sure how to
Yeah.
do that, and they're stuck or they're blocked. Like, I mean, I was
Right.
always very intuitive and in tune to the other side. But then once I really dealt with everything that was really keeping me stuck in this emotional trauma, it literally was like, the gates flew off basically.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what happened. So I'm really excited to see how, that plays out for you as you kind of get into this new exciting space. Um,
Thank you. I'm excited too.
yeah. Is there anything else you want everybody that's listening to know?
The one thing I will always say, is that you are worthy. You are worthy of working on
Mm-hmm.
yourself. You are worthy of loving. Um, you are worthy of acceptance, and you don't need to look to outside sources for those things. Um, there is no explanation other than like, you know, you were made that way. You know, you were always enough,
Mm-hmm.
and you always will be, no matter what you do. And so that's something that I know for me, I remember first hearing that, you know, when we first got involved with Arbonne, and we would hear leaders speak life over us, and I would just cry and cry and cry
Mm-hmm.
because I never had anyone do that. And I don't think you
Yeah.
can hear it enough. Um, so that's the last bit that I would have to share. Yeah.
It is so true. It is really so important. So I appreciate you giving that final reminder for everybody, because I do think that people need to hear all the time. I say it all the time too. You're always enough. You'll always be enough. You are enough.
Yeah.
It really is
Yeah.
so important. But
Mhm.
thank you so much for being here with me today, for being vulnerable and
Yeah.
and real, and really sharing all the parts of yourself that not everyone may get to see all the time. And um,
Mhm.
you know, it's been it's been it's been a decade or so, but I want to give a huge thank you not only to you and to my listeners for joining us on another powerful episode of the podcast, but I want you to continue to stay tuned for new and exciting episodes that'll be coming up. And I really hope that today's conversation has given you some kind of insight and some useful takeaways that you may be able to apply to your own lives, and maybe even just some small, tiny little way. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment so that I can continue to deliver the things and the messages that matter most to you. Go ahead and be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never, ever miss an episode filled with love, laughter, and enlightenment. You can also go over to the Channel for Healing on Facebook and on Instagram for more inspiration, reels, and videos, quotes, all kinds of good stuff. And if you want to check out thechannelforhealing.com to learn more about me, the services that I offer, and how to book with me, that would be awesome too. You can also check out my weekly blog, pictures, videos of live readings will be up soon, as well as clips of my 60-second sparks, which I hope will be sure to add some added inspiration. Until next time, guys, thanks so much.
Thank you.